you guys had some amazing success in building a much broader coalition. And so I'd love to get your advice to the listeners on what does that look like, and what recommendations you would make, not just for a presidential candidate, but all
Correct.
those down ballot candidates who are now struggling with that label of Democrat.
So, Senator, first of all, delighted to be speaking to the next Secretary of Agriculture, but I digress. Uh, what has cost us is what I call cultural arrogance. That, I grew up, I'm 75 years old. The reason I became a Democrat in the South, because I don't hate anybody. And I'm a rural white. And somehow or another, the party at some level, certainly not you or Senator Conrad, Senator Dorgan, anybody like that, set off cultural vapors that we were a coastal metropolitan educated party, and people heard that and they didn't like it. And we got to stop it. And you're not going to get people to vote for you by telling them that they're stupid. You're going to get people to vote for you by acknowledging that you want change. And now we're the vehicle to bring that change to you. But it's such a, what led to this was a long time in the making. And I think that Vice President Biden, that one thing, I mean, many things I like about him, one is he is not a culturally arrogant person. He doesn't give you the feeling that he thinks he's better than you. And that's the first step in getting, and we're not going to carry these voters. That's an illusion. But boy, if we lose less bad, if you carry the Red River counties and you lose less bad in the rest of the state, you can win an election. But it takes you got to do two things at one time.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I proved in 12. Big wins in urban areas, but also the ability to carry a number of rural counties that were historically, moderate voters. And so the real challenge that you have is the image of the national party, as carried forward by a lot of I think, I don't want to pick on anyone, but kind of this new progressive movement is very challenging from the standpoint of telling people, we hear you, we respect you, and we're not going to judge you for what you believe, and judge you for the fact that you are concerned about the Second Amendment. That, I mean, it's in the Constitution. We should all be concerned about the Second Amendment and what that means. And I think when you boil it down, right now Biden at the top of the ticket is an opportunity, I think, to open up that dialogue. But the question is, how do you get people to listen?
By talking with people, to people, not talking at people. All right, that's the first step. And we just lost that. I'll give you an example. This drives me crazy. And it's just one thing. So, a big LSU guy, everybody was. So we play in a national championship game in New Orleans. It's a Monday night. It was before what we got faced with now. And that's 80 miles away. So the university, the president of the university says we're not going to have classes on Monday and Tuesday, obviously because I don't want my daughter driving back and forth at 1:30 in the morning on a 15,000 drunk college kids on the highway, and I'm going to go to class anyway. So this guy at the New York Times editorial board, Mr. Applebaum, sends out a tweet. He says, well, a real school is going to be covered under the Sanders-Warren plan, or just fake schools like LSU? You know how culturally arrogant that is? We got a Democratic governor in our state who's a damn good Democratic governor. Why does he have to answer to somebody like this? Because Mr. Applebaum is a reflection of that urban arrogance. That I know I know he's not a elected member of the party or anything, but he reflects something that people hear, and people in your state and people in my state. we got to admit it. There's just some arrogant people in this party, and they need to learn how to shut up.
Or they need to be marginalized. I mean,
Right. Well, I'm
obviously,
doing my best to marginalize them.
well, me too. It doesn't always win me a lot of friends, let me tell you, or you either. But
Well,
our challenge, I think, for those of us who saw an opportunity to bring the country together in the 90s, and then again in the 2000s, with the election of Barack Obama. I think there's been a sense that so many Republicans have, or so many of our Democratic friends have, that forget those rural areas, forget appealing to those people. You only dilute the enthusiasm of young people. You only dilute the enthusiasm of the kind of now Democratic base of African American women and urban, suburban, highly educated women. And you have to keep reminding people that governing is a pretty important responsibility. And when you ignore a whole section of the country, you then end up with a government that cannot govern because the country's too divided.
plus, I don't want to be the reason that I'm in the Democratic Party is because I don't look down on anybody. All right, and rural white people are people. They don't need to be looked down at. We don't. We can get all the African American votes we want, all the urban votes we want. We can do well. Whose value, other than you know these Twitter jerks, have a value of looking down on someone? That doesn't reflect anything. It's done politically, and it's frankly it's immoral.
Yeah, I think, if I were going to play devil's advocate, I would say, well, they also, rural America in many places talks about being the real America, the
That is,
America that
I
has
hate
real
that.
values.
I hate
And
that.
that's just as damaging.
It it is. The real America is anybody that's here.
I had a student that I was interviewing for a scholarship, and she was from South Dakota, and she said, "Well, I have South Dakota values." And I said, "Well, explain what that is." She said, "Well, I value hard work." And I go, well, I know a lot of people in New York City who scrub toilets who value,
Oh,
hard work. And so I think this idea that we're divided by ethics or morals, or divided by some kind of sense of country, I think we've got to get back to that. We've got to get back to having leaders who are willing to say, bring people together and willing to kind of identify what that American ethic is, that unites all of us. And we damn sure know one thing: it's not the leader we have right now. I mean, it's not President Trump who fans the flames of those divisions. And so, the important thing for, I think, not just the Vice President Biden in this campaign, it's important that Democrats throughout the country start talking about, I think, bringing the country back together in ways that we have not experienced in the last couple years here with this president. But how do you do that, James? I mean, how do you get that message out that Democrats are respectful of all people?
we should. And to the young woman in South Dakota, I invite her to come to New Orleans and work on the back of a work with some sanitation workers in mid-August and tell me people don't work. All right, that's insane. But they hear that they get that from home. All right, she doesn't get that from her heart. She hears that kind of crap at the Thanksgiving table. But look, we're going to win this election. I'm not. I'm not. If we get any kind of fair vote, we're going to win. We have a chance to really win big because people, and a lot of people, they just don't want to see this. I mean, you look at these clowns in Michigan, in Illinois, in Wisconsin, like carrying, If I have guns. All right, I was in the Marine Corps. I'm in Shenandoah Valley. The second biggest day of the year, bigger than Easter, New Year's, or Thanksgiving, is the opening of deer season. All right, and it's only Christmas is only 60-40 ahead of it. All right, so you know what people are looking for is something different. So mothers, people trying to raise kids, they see these people like screaming, being rude, holding up Confederate flags and Nazi slogans, and then these rural mothers are not going to like that. They're not going to like that at all. Much less a suburban, educated female, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be a huge backlash to all this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I I think the tragedy in the last 20 years since President Clinton has really been a lack of unified purpose and mission. Um, and I think it's going to take a president like Biden, who, as you said, has no cultural arrogance. I mean, he is as down home as anybody I could find in North Dakota. I could take him to anyone's dinner table, and he would have the opportunity to relate and to people just love him when they meet him. And so the question is, how do you bring the country back together and govern the country if you ignore places like rural America, right?
Like,
So how do we get a message to rural America that matters, uh, kind of going forward?
well, there's several things. Number one is, rural America produces a lot of goods. All right, I'm sitting here, having a mail order pizza from Chicago, and that cheese was made in rural America, right? The meatball on the pizza was made in rural America. The wheat that made the dough was made in rural America. I'm eating a salad. The avocado was made in rural America. The butter lettuce was made in rural America. And we just don't need people. They're not into that right now. There's no value in it. It may be for some people like concentrated in uber liberal enclaves, but they're going to vote for us anyway, right? But it's not what the thing is. It's just against it's against being what it means to me, and I know to you, to what it being a Democrat means. I mean, you're not going to look down on an Asian tech worker in Fargo. You're not going to look down on an all-field worker in western North Dakota. You're not going to look down on a farmer or a school teacher or anything. It's just not. It's just a silly place that we end up in this world of people like Mr. Applebaum, who he and his ilk kill us at election time. And I'm going to call these people out. I'm naming names. That's the only way to stop this.
I thought it was really interesting, and like you have a lot of opportunity to engage with students from all over the country. If we were still in session, what I would force them all to read was a recent op-ed in that same newspaper, in the New York Times, which I think is an important placement, um, from a mother whose husband has a job in the oil field in Texas. And she basically was saying she watched with dismay at the kind of glee about what's happening to the oil industry, which is equally important in Louisiana
Oh,
for jobs and for good paying jobs. And she said, look, we're human beings out here. We this is our living, and there's real human misery when we aren't able to do our jobs, or when what we produce has no value. So don't be jumping up and down saying it's the end of the oil industry, when
I've had
without appreciating that this is a major employer in this country.
I have a nephew who's 43 kids. One of them was at St. Jude. She's recovered. He was the number two guy in development in Lafayette area, Louisiana. He lost his job because there's no economic activity. It's so dependent on oil. I got another nephew who's My niece married a petroleum engineer, went to Washington U in St. Louis, and they're living out there. I mean, if what Democrats could say is, look, we want to retrain because the jobs in the fossil fuel industry are not going to be what they were. Let's talk about how we can segue into renewables and help people and train people. And that's fine. You can talk like that. I mean, there's plenty of things you can say, but you're right. You don't need to take glee because, let me tell you, that industry supports a lot of people. And it's probably it's even after this, it'll probably still be in decline. But we gotta get these people trained, and particularly these young people trained as a job shift. You're gonna have to go from being a petroleum engineer to a solar engineer, or hydro engineer, or wind engineer, or anything like that, or nuclear. If you're talking about climate and you're not talking about engineering and nuclear, you're not having a serious discussion.
Well, that is obviously very. I mean, anyone who understands anything about putting electricity on a wire understands the need for baseload power and the need for clean energy uh, sources, and not have that kind of judgment. But the real challenge is getting getting our message, your message, and my message heard, because the minute that you put democratic label behind your name in states like ours, and goodness sakes, great for your governor to get elected in a state like Louisiana as a Democrat. You have to be a moderate, and you have to have a big personality like he does. But let me tell you, you're constantly fighting, not just to get yourself elected and to pursue your agenda, but you're fighting those arguments every day that Democrats believe this or Democrats believe that. And it is it absolutely has to come from the top of leadership, but for many people to push back, and to help redefine the Democratic Party, not as the party of arrogant elites, but as the party of working people again.
But look, the Democratic Party, in everybody went nuts. They went AOC, Twitter, Bernie, etc. They don't understand what the base of the Democratic Party right now is mostly African American and college educated women. That's what the Democratic Party, for the most part, is right now. And neither one of those demographics are particularly arrogant or particularly over the top left wing. Is our friend Congressman Clyburn demonstrated to the entire world. And this is not in all of the press was going crazy, and it was the whole thing. And like, gee whiz, we win a race in where the Democratic performance is plus 35. Well, you can't lose. I mean, you look at your race even in 18, the Cook PBI for North Dakota is 19. We lost by 10 and a half. Senator McCassell, she lost by 5. Then the Cook PBI in Missouri is 9. The kind of same thing for Senator Donnelly. I mean, we did lose it. It was a shame, and I wanted to win. But everywhere you turn around, we're running ahead, even in North Dakota, in Missouri, in Indiana. Not to mention Kentucky and Louisiana, in South Carolina. We're running ahead. We're going to win. We're going to win. And if we're smart, we're going to win big. And we can expand our vote in rural America. We obviously got to concentrate on high value states, understand that. We've got to concentrate on Pennsylvania, we've got to concentrate on Michigan, we've got to concentrate on Wisconsin, we've got to concentrate on Florida, North Carolina, place like that. I get it. But we're going to win this thing. And this guy has got loser written all over him. And we have to, he's a big fat loser. And that's just who he is. And people say, James, don't say that. Why? It's the truth. And people will come out and vote, and it's going to discourage them. Because, part of what some of these people like about Trump is, well, he tells it like it is. He's going to lose like it is, too.
Well, when people tell me he tells it like it is, I go, do you believe he tells the truth? And most people know. I mean, even his staunchest supporters know that the guy is not a truth teller, right? They're willing to tolerate it. They're willing to tolerate behaviors, which is always interesting to me, in a president that they wouldn't tolerate in a neighbor or in
Once
a
they,
a
once,
shopkeeper.
once they see that he's a loser, which they're going to see, their attitudes are going to change.
Yeah, I think it's always hard to convince people that they made a mistake, which is
Okay.
why it's frequently easier for incumbents.
Right.
Because, but I think that the president is his own worst enemy. I mean, I used to say if he were just halfway normal as a human being, he'd be at 60%. The Democrats have been riding his personality faults for a long time, and the reality is we can't be the party of let's not elect Trump. We've got to be the party that governs once we get the job. And I think that's one of the reasons why I care a lot about what's happening in rural America, because once we start governing again and have the opportunity to govern, we've got to make sure that our message to rural America is an inclusive message that expresses a great deal of concern about the
Right.
conditions, the economic challenges that rural America has.
So this is my favorite statistic. 18% of America elects 52 senators. Now, let me repeat that. 18% of America elects 52 senators. Rural Americans, in addition to being people who deserve and need to be respected, not looked down on, are just strategically located. And if you think, and you've been there, if Joe Biden wins, we break it, we keep the House, and Mitch McConnell's in charge of the Senate, and John Roberts is running the federal judiciary, yeah, we'll have competent ambassadors, but nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. You cannot change this country without rural America, without cutting in the margin. You can win in North Carolina. You can win in Georgia. You can win in Texas. You can win in Arizona and Colorado, Montana, Iowa. All right, Maine. Most of these states are heavily rural. Are heavily rural. You're not going to beat Susan Collins unless you penetrate urban Maine. You're not going to beat Joni Ernst unless you penetrate rural Iowa. My good friend Governor Bullock, he's not going to win without penetrating rural Montana. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Get over it. You can't get it done with your urban base. You need to expand it. Get real, people. And when these candidates shifting out there talking to rural America, praise them, cheer them. That's what you want. You want to win. You don't want to look down on people.
And I think that so many of these folks see rural America as alien America. We could never go there. I always laugh. It would do events in New York City, and they'd go, what would I say to someone who was a farmer in North Dakota? And I would say, well, you would say, hello, how are you? How's your family? The same thing you'd say to anybody else in the world.
Probably
And
go cell phone and check the commodity prices. That'd be a
but
good entree to thing, man. Gee, if you
yeah,
can't look at this as
yeah,
a book.
boy, corn's been taking it tough, and I hear people
Right,
aren't planting a lot of it because of what's happened with ethanol.
right.
The irony of this for rural America is this president's been economically horrible for rural
Oh,
America.
just see a farmer and say, hey, how has technology changed the way that you do things in the last 10 years? They'll talk to you for 30 minutes on that. I mean, just treat them like people. Just I was in North Dakota. You know, Hal Rosenbluth has that place. It must be like 40 miles south of Bismarck.
Yeah,
Big. I was there
beautiful on the Missouri.
right on the Missouri River. I got to tell you something. If you've never been to rural North Dakota, you're missing some of the most scenic parts of the United States, and you're not going to be crowded. But right there, where that is on the Missouri River, it's just there's real understated beauty in that state. It really is, and I love being out there. And we'd ride horses and round up cows and castrate and do everything you can imagine. And he'd bring out all of his clients. In fact, Hal called me, texted me like a couple 3 weeks ago, seeing how I was doing. But that's a gorgeous, that's gorgeous part of the world. Bismarck is a fine city. I'd like to get back there sometimes.
Yeah, well, you're welcome anytime, James. And I think that one of the reasons why we did One Country was to push back against this notion that I hear from a lot of people in the Democratic Party that rural America's lost, it's insignificant, and your statistic is absolutely the most valuable. But what you're up against when you say that, that 18% of the country elects 52 senators. What yeah, what
What,
they
what,
want to do is they want to undo the great compromise, right? They want to rewrite the Constitution.
it's not going to
And
happen.
I'm like, yeah, well, amen.
All right. And I mean, it's not going to happen. North Dakota is not going to ratify a constitutional amendment that diminishes its political power. Neither is Wyoming. Neither is Vermont. All right. It's not going to happen. Get over it. It may happen someday. Right now, we have a career criminal who is a buffoon running the country. We got one job, people. That's to get him out of there. That's it. You're not going to remake the Senate. You're not going to remake the Electoral College. You're not going to do any of that.
Well, the other thing, and you know this, I tell people this: when I ran in 12, I knew that I had to outperform Barack Obama in North Dakota. But I figured, maybe 20%. But when we did tracking polls at the end, the minute Barack Obama's margin went over 22, where he lost the state by more than 22, I could not win. I could take that level of headwind. President Trump won North Dakota by 36 points, right? So and I obviously outperformed, any Democrat who ran in the last, 10 years in North Dakota, and it still wasn't enough to win. And my point in all of that is that at some point, if the Democratic Party, even the most liberal of Democrats, want to actually have the ability to govern the country, they cannot do it without having a conversation and winning back those voters who voted in rural America, who voted for Barack Obama, proving that when people say, oh, it's all about racism, it's not all about racism. That's your shortcut. It's about losing the hearts and minds and people feeling disrespected by a political party or completely disconnected from uh, a party that wants to socially engineer everything in our country. And that's not the Democratic Party that I signed up for. And I think it's incumbent on people like you and I, who are Democrats, who we didn't sign up for that, to push back and help redefine the party. Because there's plenty of people trying to push it the other way.
Well, I think that now we have Vice President Biden at the head of the ticket. I don't think that, I think he's going to help a lot in that matter. The other thing is when people say that, right? Let's take a state I know well, Pennsylvania. Take Luzerne County, Wilkes-Barre. Just you can take Westmoreland or Beaver, or Cambria, anyone you want, right? We're losing there like terribly, like 85-15 of some of these places, all right? 80-20. And some of it is racial. I agree with that, all right? But suppose you cut the margin to 70-30. You know what you would win? Everything. 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 And people have to understand that. It's not just, it's not just that the idea is you're getting slaughtered. You can do better. You can do better. And by smart targeting, some rural Americans, some of us went to college, some didn't, some are married, some are not, some go to church a lot, some go less. All right. There are, it's not the same person. They're different people in rural America. We would never say like all African Americans are the same, or all Jews are the same, or all Latinos are the same. We'd say, James, you can't say that. That's almost racist. And you're right, but why are you allowed to say all the people that I grew up with are the same?
Yeah.
That's what I don't
I mean,
understand.
it's a real challenge, I think, to try and figure out how you can maintain an agenda that moves this country forward in ways that you and I know it needs to move forward. Whether that is a better education system that broadens people's horizons and doesn't narrow people into jobs that won't exist in the next 10 years, and preparing the world for that. And it's interesting because I think people think, oh, all those coal miners in West Virginia, they just those guys just want to mine coal and they don't want to change. And I'm like, have you gone out and actually talked to coal miners in West Virginia? Because they understand that that there has to be a challenge and a transition. But what they're hearing is that their work, quality of the work that they do, isn't respected. And when you are working the way as hard as what they work, and you feel disrespected by a group of people or by a political party, you aren't going to open your mind to take on, to voting for those folks. And those same people used to be reliable Democratic voters. And we've got to somehow deliver a message of inclusion and a message of change that appreciates and respects who they are and what they've done with their lives. And I think it's always a challenge um, for me to explain when against that why I'm a Democrat against a backdrop of people who are literally saying things that disrespect the people that I grew up with.
And if you explain to people why you're a Democrat, then that's the antithesis. The people like Mr. Applebaum are completely the opposite reason of why I became a Democrat and why I remain a Democrat. People like Joe Biden are by and large the reason that I am one. And I thought we had many candidates in our field that got insufficient attention that were from the same cut of non-arrogant cloth. Actually, I'm not for Bernie. I don't think Bernie is an arrogant man. I think he's an ideologue, all right? Wasn't for him, but I don't think he personally has any sense of. I mean, he probably has a sense of ideological righteousness, and that I disagree with. But I don't think Bernie Sanders thinks he's better than other people, and sometimes we give off that vapor.
Yeah, I, you know, I think that if you took each one of these candidates individually, and I want to applaud you for your endorsement of my great friend Michael Bennett. I think he is one of the most talented leaders in the Democratic Party, and I know that we haven't heard the last of him. And I would recommend to anybody watching this to read his book. It's a great discussion about what needs to happen in this country. But I think when you take each one of these individually, you would say, well, they don't seem arrogant, but somehow collectively as a party, that's the vibe that we put off.
And look, the Senator Bennett thing. I would talk to people and they said, "Well, James, Michael Bennett would be the best president," and so what do I? Okay, then I'm gonna be for it. And the day he dropped out, then got back to work. But I feel totally comfortable. I didn't even know him before. Everybody in the world you would talk to people, and people I really respect.
You're one of the most recognized Democratic quote unquote operative. Somebody who knows how to win elections, somebody who knows how to broaden the base and count your votes. What three pieces of advice would you give to um, uh, state parties? This is going to be a little different than questions you
Right.
usually get. To state Democratic parties that could help them reestablish their party and their opportunities in states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Texas. What advice would you give?
Well, first of all, what state parties really need is like pristine data. So when people run, I mean, I'm talking about, you know, voter lists, where there's possibility for registration, historical data, etc. That's very, very important. The next thing that's really important is recruit good candidates. I mean, if it matters what the candidate is. This is something that drives me crazy. That somehow or another, and I call it political Presbyterianism, where the result of the election is preordained by the demographic composition of the election. That's bullshit. All right, it just is. They're wrong. And what they miss is this, and it's an important strategic point. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to make it. They'll say, James, look, Trump's going to get 94% of the Republicans. You understand that. There's nothing you can do to change that. And, Biden's going to get 95% of the Democrats. And my answer is, you're correct. But the number of self-identified Republicans and Democrats, that is not a static number. So if you get 94% of 41 or 94% of 34, that's a huge difference. Because how people describe the self-identification of a party is what matters. And you're seeing more and more people that are going to self-identify as Democrats. So I'm not a believer in political Presbyterianism. Right. Start there. And then, state parties, particularly in difficult states like North Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, they need to know where to pick people off, where there are mayor's races, where there might be, county races, and start to work to build a base of political power. And every now and then you're going to come in, be able to sneak and take a couple away. And, make them fight. Make them fight for all of their seats, because a lot of these people get there and they got the right registration thing, and they become lazy. Challenge them. And the state parties have got to be, very, very data oriented. They got to be very, very recruitment oriented. And the other thing is, and this is everything in politics, my philosophy of politics is you got to run a pirate ship. You're out there, you're calculating wind, you're calculating wind direction, you're calculating speed of your boat, you calculate, and then you go and you loot them, you take their gold, you burn them. And that's what you got to do in a campaign. You got to be always on the lookout. Every time you get a chance or an advantage, you seize it. And I just think the lethargy that has become in the modern Democratic Party has been disheartening, where we have a bunch of demographers that say, if this is going, what happened in Texas? Everybody says, well, Texas is going to turn blue in April of 2025 at the point of the intersection of the ratio of the white to non-white population. You know what happened in Texas? We won. We won on the north side of Dallas. We won on the west side of Houston. We won in states because why? People changed. These educated females changed their votes. And so they came back and they did an analysis of the 2018 Texas returns, and Beto O'Rourke came within like 2.4. And they found out that the ratio of white to non-white wasn't any different. The ratio of young, old wasn't any different. People changed their minds. That's what happened. That's what happened. And don't sit there and wait for some in your mind, which is the inevitable time bomb. Of course, what happens when people see that, they get scared because they said, look, all of this is going to diminish my power. So it's all so stupid. Be a pirate ship. Everywhere there's an advantage, go. Steal.
And
Fight.
and 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 many times your opponent will give you that opening to just walk through the front door, and you've got to be
Yes,
willing and able to actually and ready to seize that moment.
absolutely. And they get lethargic and they don't have the lookouts posted in the right place. All right. Down below decks and with the rum barrel, and the pirate ship is just sitting there stalking.
Yeah,
Then you move in.
it's a, yeah. It. I mean, I I think people would say we were pretty good at this in 12.
Yeah,
Um, but we were pretty good at looting some votes and winning in places
you
people
are.
didn't think we could win. But I will tell you that there is a point at which the headwinds are just too difficult,
There's
and you
right,
cannot say
right,
as yeah,
right. You're
you
not gonna.
cannot.
Yeah, if you see Nelson's ship, you get away from it. You're not gonna. It's not. You don't want. You're not gonna seize the HMS Victory, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Good pirate seizes
the
opportunity.
yeah the the image of the Democratic Party, which in the past was, we respect everyone. That's that, and that is who the Democratic Party is and should be. But that's not the image that people have of our party. And Joe Donnelly and I tell a story, and it's about you get those big message blocks, and which negative word gets said the most often about Joe or Heidi, and when you look at it, the largest and the biggest font is Democrat. And we're working to try and change that. And I will tell you this, Mr. Carville, your voice out there, speaking bluntly, truth to power, or truth to people who think that they have power, is absolutely essential. And I hope you keep talking about it, that you keep challenging this party to be more respectful and to be uh, better able to pirate a couple more elections. And I think once we have the ability to govern, I think to govern in a way that is inclusive of everyone.
Yeah, sorry to make one more case before I go. We have such the women leaders of our party, I think, are more down to earth and more pragmatic than the males. I mean, let's talk Governor Mills in Maine, or Governor Gina, Governor Whitman, yourself. All right. I mean, I'm just, if I start naming names, I'll just, but in every one, every every woman Democrat that I know that is actually running something has a very much of a expansive view of the electorate, has none of this arrogance at all. And I'm always, when people would go about Nancy Pelosi, I said, you don't understand. I want my daughters to grow up like Nancy Pelosi. All right. Nancy Pelosi doesn't think she's better than anybody.
I
And
mean, it's absolutely true. She does
And
not.
we got to
And
look, and I'm not doing this because Biden is, because part and part of the party. I'm just telling you, these women in leadership places, they're pragmatic as all get go, man. They understand, what this is. I mean, we got a lot of great, not, we don't have a lot of great male leaders and or anything like that. But I just always had a, kind of a soft spot, and I see the way that a lot of these women are governing, and it's really remarkable, and they govern with pragmatism and heart, and they all got a little streak of meanness, which is a good thing. It's okay to be, you know what? I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I'm old and I can get away with it. You got to be a little bit of a bitch here. You just got to. That's it.
Oh, or have I have a great story about Nancy Pelosi, and then I'll let you go. And I just want to share it with you. We were all in Cuba when President Obama decided that he was going to normalize relationships. A, a lot of the people invited were people who had worked on Cuba policies that tried to reverse think what was a failed policy. And so I got a chance to go with the speaker who at the time, I don't think she was the speaker at the time, but she was leading the delegation, the congressional delegation. And we were at a event and we were all on the bus waiting to go. And there was a limousine in front of us that was waiting for an Obama official. I will unname that person, not name that person, but we were all getting kind of restless, and it was like 10 minutes of waiting, and then it was like 15 minutes of waiting. All of a sudden, Nancy Pelosi in the front of the bus stands up, tells the bus driver to open up the door, gets on her, 3-inch heels, which I never can understand how she can be on those heels all day long. She walks down the steps, she walks over to the limo driver, she raps on the window and says, "Move the limousine," gets back in the bus. She didn't look to anybody else to do that. She went out there and did it herself. And anybody who thinks that she's arrogant and unwilling to do things, they don't understand her power. Her
Nope.
power, every person in that bus saw a leader, somebody who was willing to do the work that it takes to lead a delegation. And I know it's a small example, but it left a lasting impression on me.
No, and and she's a pirate ship captain too. That's what we got to be. We got to run a pirate ship. We got to seize that loot. And resistance is futile. All right, that's it. We're going to win, and if we're smart and we calculate and we press and we're aggressive, we're going to win big. We're not going to lose. We're going to lose North Dakota by maybe 15 points, and that's it. We're going to do so much better than we did before. I promise you.
Yeah,
I promise you.
And my next step is then we've got to prove that we can govern inclusively.
Got to.
And that will change the impression. That will make a huge difference. And keep out there, keep saying what you're saying, keep doing what you're doing, keep speaking truth to power. And
everybody in Louisiana is excited because we got, I think his name is Jabril Cox. He was like this all-world player at North Dakota State. And he had, which is like the Alabama of that division. And he signed to play it 1 year at LSU. That's kind of the way eligibility works. So we are so fired up that we got a bison coming down to us. We couldn't be more excited.
Well, from one state who sports a national championship to another state that sports a national championship, and I know that if you get cut, you bleed yellow and gold, right? Or yellow
purple.
And purple.
Purple,
yeah,
that's all right. Close enough. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Well, we're gold and green. So,
and by the way, Coach Ogeron, you talk about you're kind of a guy. Oh, if he recruited you, you'd put your helmet on and charge.
That's what we need.
All right.
So you take care and enjoy your pizza, and thank you so much for the time.
You bet.
It is always delightful to talk to you.
You're a great American.
Thanks for listening. And if you're really interested and you want more information and want to actually see visually what we're talking about, join us on social media at onecountryproject.org.